My name is Joseph, son of Jacob, and this is the story of my life. I was born in the land of Canaan, the 11th of my father's 12 sons. From a young age, I was different. My father loved me deeply, more than he loved my other brothers, and this did not go unnoticed by them. They envied me, and as time went by, this envy turned into hatred. My father gave me a special gift, a colorful robe that symbolized his love and favoritism. This only increased the fury of my brothers. In addition, I began to have strange and prophetic dreams. I dreamed that my brothers and I were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf rose and stood upright, while their sheaves bowed down around mine. In another dream, I saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down before me. When I shared these dreams, my brothers became even more furious, and even my father was surprised. One day my father asked me to go and check on my brothers, who were tending the flock. When they saw me from afar, their hearts filled with hatred. "Here comes the dreamer," they said to each other. They decided that this would be the moment to get rid of me. They threw me into an empty well, and while they were discussing what to do next, a group of Ishmaelite merchants appeared. They decided to sell me as a slave for 20 pieces of silver. It took me a while to realize that my life as I knew it was about to change drastically. I was taken to Egypt and sold as a slave to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Even as a slave, I worked diligently, and in time Potiphar made me responsible for his entire household. However, Potiphar's wife tried to seduce me, and when I refused her advances, she lied, saying that I had tried to attack her. Potiphar, enraged, had me thrown into prison. In prison, my life seemed to have hit rock bottom, but God was with me. Even in adversity, I was placed in charge of the other prisoners. It was there that I met Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, both of whom were also in prison. They both had disturbing dreams, and God gave me the understanding to interpret them. The cupbearer's dream meant that he would be restored to his position, while the baker's dream foretold his execution. And as predicted, the dreams came true. 2 years later, Pharaoh had dreams that no one could interpret. The cupbearer, remembering me, told Pharaoh about my ability to interpret dreams. I was brought before Pharaoh, and he told me his dreams: 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows, and 7 full ears of grain and 7 dry ears. God gave me the interpretation. The 7 years of fat cows and full ears represented 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Impressed, Pharaoh appointed me governor over all Egypt, charged with preparing the country for the impending famine. During the years of plenty, I stored up vast quantities of grain. When famine struck, not only Egypt but also the surrounding lands, everyone came to me for food. One day my own brothers came to Egypt to buy grain, not knowing that I, the governor, was the brother they had sold into slavery. I recognized them, but they did not recognize me. After several back and forths, testing their hearts and loyalty, I revealed my identity to them. "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt," I said, and they were terrified. But instead of revenge, I offered them forgiveness. "Do not be afraid," I said, "for God has sent me ahead of you to save lives." I called my father and my entire family to come and live in Egypt, where I sustained them during the years of famine. And so the young dreamer, rejected by his brothers, became the savior of his family and of Egypt. This is my story, the story of Joseph, the son of Jacob, who trusted God even in the darkest times and saw his dreams come true in ways he could never have imagined. After being sold by his brothers, I, Joseph, was taken to Egypt, where I was bought by Potiphar, an important official and captain of Pharaoh's guard. Even as a slave, God was with me and blessed everything I did. Potiphar soon noticed this and put me in charge of his entire household. Under my administration, Potiphar's household prospered, and he trusted me completely, not worrying about anything except what he ate. However, a great challenge arose. Potiphar's wife began to look at me with evil intentions. She constantly approached me, trying to seduce me, asking me to sleep with her. I rejected her advances because I knew that this would be a great betrayal not only against Potiphar, who trusted me, but also against God. I said to her, "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" However, she did not give up. One day, while I was doing my chores around the house and the other servants were away, she grabbed me by my tunic, insisting that I stay with her. To escape this trap, I took off my tunic and fled the house. Enraged by my rejection, she cried out for help, and when the other servants arrived, she lied, claiming that I had tried to attack her, using my tunic as evidence. When Potiphar arrived, his wife repeated the false accusation, and not listening to me, he became furious and threw me in prison, even though it was an Egyptian prison, a place of dishonor and suffering. God did not abandon me. Soon the prison warden realized that I was different and gave me responsibilities within the prison, making me responsible for the other prisoners. God continued to bless me, and even there, in a place of darkness, I found ways to prosper. It was during this time that Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker were thrown into prison. One night, they both had disturbing dreams, and by the grace of God, I was able to interpret them. The cupbearer dreamed of a vine that produced 3 branches of grapes, and in the dream he was pressing the grapes into Pharaoh's cup. I interpreted the dream by saying that in 3 days he would be restored to his position of serving Pharaoh. The baker, on the other hand, dreamed of 3 baskets of bread on his head, the bread being eaten by birds. I explained that this meant that in 3 days he would be executed. And so it happened. The cupbearer was restored, and the baker was executed. Before the cupbearer left prison, I asked him to remember me before Pharaoh. But he forgot me. 2 years passed until Pharaoh had 2 dreams that no one could interpret. In the first, he dreamed of 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 thin cows. In the second dream, he saw 7 full ears of wheat being swallowed up by 7 dry ears and burned by the wind. None of the wise men and magicians of Egypt could understand the meaning of these dreams. It was then that the cupbearer remembered me and told Pharaoh about my ability to interpret dreams. I was quickly summoned to Pharaoh. When he told me his dreams, I made it clear that it was not I who was interpreting them, but God. Then God revealed to me that the dreams meant 7 years of great abundance, followed by 7 years of extreme famine. I advised Pharaoh to appoint someone wise and prudent to organize the grain collection during the years of abundance, so that there would be enough food during the years of famine. Pharaoh was impressed, and, recognizing the wisdom that God had given me, appointed me governor of all Egypt. I became the second most powerful man in the country, responsible for the entire process of storing grain and managing the coming crisis. So I went from prison straight to the palace, from prisoner to governor, because God never forgot me and always had a greater purpose in every trial. Before we continue exploring this powerful story of restoration and hope, I want to invite you to take a brief but important pause. If this message touched your heart, if this journey through the life of Joseph of Egypt awakened something within you, be sure to subscribe to the channel to continue following this and other stories full of meaning. Turn on the bell to receive notifications and never miss the next chapter of this and other stories that inspire and transform. And, of course, leave your comment. Your opinion is precious, and I really want to know how this story impacted your life. Now that you have done this, are you ready? Let's continue this deep journey together into the heart of prophecy and what it teaches us. Before his death, Joseph made a very special request of his brothers and family. He knew that although he had lived most of his life in Egypt and held a position of great authority there, Egypt was not the land that God had promised to his ancestors. Joseph trusted in God's promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that the descendants of Israel would inherit the land of Canaan. So Joseph asked that when the Israelites finally left Egypt and returned to the promised land, his bones be taken with them. In Genesis 50 verse 25, Joseph said, "God will surely come to your aid. When he does, carry my bones up from here." Joseph was certain that God would one day deliver his people from slavery in Egypt and return them to the land that had been promised to them. This request was an act of faith, showing that even in his death, he had complete confidence in God's promises being fulfilled. Many years later, when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt during the Exodus, he fulfilled Joseph's request. In Exodus 13 verse 19, we read that Moses took Joseph's bones with him, fulfilling the promise he had made to the patriarch. Later, Joseph's bones were finally buried at Shechem in the land of Canaan, as recorded in Joshua 24 verse 32. Thus, Joseph's wish was fulfilled, and he was buried in the promised land with his ancestors.